All right, what's happening, YouTube? This is Nick Leonard with Just Lust League swag again. This time, it's going to be a OTT deck profile for standard. This is the deck that I used for White Plains, New York this past weekend. Our team, which consisted of myself, Justin Gee, and Brent Wallace, we ended up making it to top 8. And unfortunately scrubbed out in the first round with a complete sweep, which was kind of unfortunate. I really wanted to make top 4 and get that mat or get into the top 3. Even more so now that we did really well for premium on day 2 and got second place. It would have been nice to get back-to-back medals, but hey, a top is a top, especially out of, I think it was 269 teams off the top of my head. That's a lot of players and a lot of teams. The rounds, we were scheduled for 9 to top and cut to top 8, but they ended up cutting it short and doing 8 rounds, which was fine because it was a very long day. So I'll go over the deck profile real quick and then do a brief tournament report. The deck itself is pretty much your typical OTT deck, so I won't go into too much detail about all the pieces, which I'm sure most of you are already familiar with. I'll just go into a little bit of detail of the tech choices. So I am running this time specifically the Imperial Daughter build. So I am running 4 CEO Amaterasu. Great first ride, great rear guard, beat stick. People actually gun for her if they see her on rear guard, just because she gets so big, especially, you know, riding Imperial Daughter and doing all your top deck check skills. After that, we come with the 4 Imperial Daughter. This card is so strong. I mean, it does everything. Scries, lets you draw, gets the power and the crit, and you can pump up either herself or something else with +6. Just so much value out of, you know, a Counter Blast and a Soul Blast. And then the 2 Deer, you do so much drawing and tutoring that you don't need to run 3. I don't have any issues seeing it when I need to see it at 2, except when you know, double damage check them, but it's Vanguard, so that happens. Next, for Promised Daughter, I absolutely love this card. It's amazing that people will gun for her with, you know, 30 or 40k rear guard swings. I'm like, okay, and then next turn I just call another one. Absolutely love it. And then I'm running 4 Rectangle Magus. This card was such a good addition from that structure deck. She makes your grade 2 game really strong. Stacking that trigger, and with her own skill and passing the trigger effect, she's 24. So against a non-force deck, it forces a 20k shield to block her if, you know, your opponent doesn't hit a defensive trigger or whatnot. Absolutely love this card, and you know, her +5 is, it doesn't cost anything, so if she stays on the field, she'll continue to serve you well. And then next, we have this Battle Sister, grade 2, that I'm not going to even try to pronounce her name, but I chose to run her over some of the other cards just because she helps with consistency. She lets you tutor for your grade 3s, put them on top of deck, and then you can either draw them with this skill, or if you have to drive check it into them, that's fine too as well. But she also gets +5k with her skill, which is really important, because if you're going second and you're going against force, getting that +5k to make her 14 makes it so that you can hit the force number without providing a booster or relying on a trigger. So it helps to keep up the pressure. One of my favorite plays is to open up with her, and then on your grade 2 turn, you ride this, get your grade 3 on top, and then use Rectangle Magus to add it to hand and stack your trigger. This combo is so strong, puts a lot of pressure to it as well. on your opponent. And then if you have the Promise Daughter on the other rear guard, your grade 2 game is really strong. Next for the grade 1s, I'm running 4 Cure Magus. Really solid addition from the trial deck. I absolutely love this card. There's so many cool little interactions you can do with this card. So it's probably going to be a while until they release something good enough to replace her. Next, running 3 of the babies. With the addition of Rectangle Magus, you are now counterblasting and soul blasting a lot faster than the original build. So this is to help mitigate that. Yeah. What I like about this card too as well is it's a card that requires no condition, in the sense that you can like play it onto the field early game and just have it chill there. And when you're ready to use the skill, which I believe is at 3 damage, yeah, you gotta have at least 3 damage, you just pop it into soul and then you replace it with one of your other better grade ones like Cure, or the next one here, which is one of my personal favorite cards and a tech choice, is Weather Girl Soda. So this card right here, the reason I like this card is to help me against my worst matchups, which is Excel. And playtesting, even though it didn't really come up much during the tournament because I didn't really play any Excel decks, and the Excel decks I did play, I practically crushed them, so it didn't really come up. But in all my playtesting against Murakumo and Gold Paladin, especially Gold Paladin, you get caught with 2 protect markers and 2 or 3 different, or 2 or 3 draw PGs, and against Excel, like that's hot garbage for you. But then you have her, and then all of a sudden those 5 PGs turn into 10k shields, and in playtesting, that saved my butt more times than I can count. So this card is really good against the Excel matchup. It's really good against those pesky cards like that have the Battledore effect. Like if a 17k Musashi is poking at you and you're required to drop 2 cards, you can just use her skill to get yourself plus 10k and block it, or do that and intercept, and you don't have to drop 2 cards. Or when you go against Ezel, not so much Kagura because they can retire her, but you know, against Ezel with the guard restrict, you can use her skill to help block the 2 crit Ezel that's coming at you. So I really like her. Unfortunately, she didn't perform that well for me for the tournament because I didn't really go into Excel. So, but just in case I did, she was there. So lastly, I'm running Farfell Magus. It's still a solid card. After some of my performance in some of the matchups, I might change this out for another grade 1, which is Tetra Magus, to help replenish my hand. I kind of have like a 50-50 relationship with Tetra Magus because I would play test with it and it would kind of go against how the deck played, because you would stack with Imperial Daughter and you didn't want to draw with Tetra Magus. So she kind of just, you called her as a vanilla, or you know, just sat in your hand as shield. Whereas this, you know, you can use her early game, which I don't like about Tetra. She's only useful really at grade 3. So if you want to do any early game rush or shenanigans, you kind of are hesitant to call Tetra. But this, you could do some really cool stuff early game and on your grade 3 turn with when you ride into CEO. So that's why I run her. But I might try Tetra again just to see if I can get some more hand power against the Shadow Paladin. And then triggers, trigger lineup's pretty standard. I'm running 8 critical, 4 of the draw PG, and then 4 heals. Nothing surprising there. So for the matchups, let's see here. Round 1, I ended up going against Gear Chronicle. He couldn't get his bind engine going, so I think at most he ever got bound was 8 grades, and that was pretty much late in the game, so that ended up being a complete wash. Round 2, we ended up playing against one of our other teams from the shop here, which was kind of unfortunate playing them second round, but I ended up playing against Tachikaze, which, me personally, I have an absolute poor record against Tachikaze with OTT. For whatever reason, that deck just loves to sack and steamroll me, so I was actually going into this matchup really worried. But luckily, he bricked, and I basically steamrolled over him. So against my one of my Excel matchups, I didn't end up needing Soda, but that deck, it really doesn't matter because they usually hit hard anyway, so you rather keep the PG. Round 3 was against Neonectar. Against this deck, I like to go aggro early just because even though as a protect deck, I'm getting continuous PGs, you know, mid to late game, once I get to that second grade 3 ride with the Musketeer chick. It's late, I don't remember her name, that buffs up the field. You'll eventually run out of grade 3s, so I basically just rushed early, got him to 4 damage pretty quick, and then through what's her name, through Imperial Daughter, kept on stacking the crit, so he had to guard a lot, and then eventually I just broke through his hand. Round 4 was against Bermuda Triangle. This was a tough matchup, but I finally was able to just slowly manage the damage I take, try to guard the low ones and eat the high ones, and then eventually just broke through his hand. It's a tough matchup. Against this matchup, very similar to Neonectar, you got to aggro early to force them to either high damage early so that they have to guard once you get to grade 3, or if they want to guard early, just makes your 2 crit daughters and whatnot go through. Round 5 was against Great Nature, the only other Excel matchup. This ended up being a win. Let's see here. If I remember right, he didn't have the most optimal hand, so when he did his grade 3 ride, it was very weak, and once I got to grade 3, I was just able to crack back really hard. I also rushed early against this deck because it's, you know, it gets an Excel deck that gets a lot of resources. It's hard to manage even with sodas and whatnot, so I aggroed early and made sure I put him in a very bad position, so by the time I got to grade 3, he had to guard a lot. So round 6, I ended up playing against Shadow Paladin, and this was my first loss. Unfortunately, my opponent got high roll, which is already an uphill battle for me against Shadow Paladin, and honestly, I don't remember the specifics about it, but I just remember it being a tough match, and my opponent just ended up getting the win, ended up out-resourcing me. I couldn't break through his hand, and eventually I ran out of PGs for all those high attacks. Round 7, I played against Kagero. I honestly was not expecting to see Kagero this late in the round, so I was a little bit nervous. I always am playing against Kagero because, well, you know how it is with Waterfall. That card could be so sacky. So a little bit of back and forth. I aggroed early with Daughters, and you know, he tried to swing at Daughter with Overlord. I perfect guarded that. I wasn't even given the chance to restand and get more triggers, and ate the first Waterfall, and then by the second Waterfall I ended up making it a no pass by guarding with like 80-some thousand shield, just because my opponent by the end of it by the end of the drive tracks would have 4 cards in hand, and I was set up to deer him next turn, so I wasn't going to mess around with a, 2 to pass or whatnot, and then I bopped him with deer the following turn. Round 8 was against Shadow Paladin again. This time it was a win. I ended up low rolling again against this, but fortunately he didn't have the most optimal hand. I don't think he saw Nemain early, so he had a bit of a slow start, so he wasn't able to out tempo me right from the bat. And once I started getting into my daughter rides, I was able to poke through his resources. And then in our top 8 matchup, I ended up playing against Shadow Paladin. This was my second loss, so my personal record was 6-2. No, 7-2. Yep, 7-2. Both of my losses to Shadow Paladin. Again, I got high rolled, so I went second, which is an uphill battle, and the guy ended up opening the nuts in terms of getting all of his pieces. He had a very strong grade 2 turn, and he just out-resourced me and out-tempoed me, and I couldn't crack back. After he was, done retiring his units with just the nature of OTT, scrying the triggers, I got caught with way too many triggers on my hand, so some of my later turns were very weak, and I just got outpaced. I lost top 8, and then my other 2 teammates lost, so we got swept top 8 and got knocked out. But it was fun regardless. Both in standard and premium, we got tops, so I'd say overall we did pretty well for the weekend, and hope to continue performing just as well for the next one. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Later.